just to double check the sound. I want to check it. Takes about 2 minutes. There it is. Looks good. See?
Yeah.
All right, let's see what the sound looks like.
So just refresh Todd and.
Yeah, I got him.
Okay.
Test.
Because we're live.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you're good. Yeah, that looks real good.
Refresh it on my phone.
Okay, let's just go ahead and let me turn this off. All right, what's happening, everybody? Soulogy's in Sedona. We're going to give it a little bit of
Oh, okay, cool.
give it about we're going to give it about another minute and let people come in, and we're going to talk a little bit about Franco. I could hear
Hey.
the hood.
Yeah. Listen.
Huh? What'd she say? Did I miss that? What?
No. I thought they couldn't hear me.
Oh, no, they can hear you. So we're going to just kill just a little bit of time, just to allow people time. Oh, we already got 52 people. I guess we don't need to do that.
Okay.
I was going to play a little Franco funk, but we can wait till later.
We could do that too.
I was going to show you how I do that. So this program. What? The anything off the archives.
All right.
So this is a little piece of the 7,000, 8,000 hours of archives that we have. All right.
If that's not convenient, don't worry about
No,
it.
I'm not. I just was showing you. All right, what's going on, everybody? We got 79 people in the house on all of our platforms. And it looks like you can hear us okay. Boom, boom, boom. Hello, Jim. Okay. Hello, everybody. Soulogy in Sedona. We've had one hell of a weekend. That was what? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And also
And Monday.
Monday, yeah.
Today is now Thursday, and we have about 50% recovered. I don't need this on anymore. I already tested it. I don't need this on.
You're more closer, so I look a little bigger.
So I thought what we would do, well, first of all, Franco and Kimberly were supposed to leave. It's okay. They were supposed to leave today.
Yes, tonight.
Yeah, they were supposed to leave today, and things just worked out. Ashley Lee has gifted us a condo in VOC. Thank you, Ashley Lee, until the 10th, and Franco and Kimberly decided to stay until then. So what we're wanting to do is to do 1 or 2 broadcasts a day to kind of expand awareness of Franco's work, Kimberly's work throughout Sedona, and also, of course, online. Although most of y'all are familiar, we have picked up a lot of new people, and so we'd like to, Franco and Kimberly are Soulogy, along with a lot of other core people, and of course the community. Everyone is equal. So we got into a conversation last night for about an hour and a half. Just happened. We both stayed up past our bedtime, and we just had this conversation. It was all over the. I say all over the place. It was cohesive, but it was a lot of subjects that I was able to kind of pull out of Franco, or I guess go into the far reaches, or at least for us anyway, not him, but for the far reaches of his code, or what he knows, or what he's got turned on. And it was very interesting. I personally received, we had a verbal conversation. I had certain questions. Hopefully we can kind of back up, and we'll just see how it goes. But I also received a lot of information and code that was nonverbal. And although the verbal may have been indirectly the reason for it, it was very interesting. I think that's something that's really going to be coming into our lives more and more. So we talked about a lot of things, and then he said at one point to me, which is what he said to me on the first show we ever did, "Are you sure your people are ready for this?" And I said, "Hell yes, I think we are." So 111 people in the house. Having said that,
All right, good number.
So I don't know where to start. Was there something you wanted to talk about? I know.
Well, I just first of all, it's great to connect with you again, and this is the first time I get to meet Todd in person. Of course, we arrived on well, I guess we saw you on Friday, the first day of the event, the festival, and it was great. It was like brothers meeting again. Even though we never met before, we've done things online and communicated online, but it was great to be in person. But the whole festival was so amazing. For me, it was over, I guess, almost 2 years. Not quite 2 years, but since I've had an actual live event, and I've been doing this for quite a few years: retreats, workshops, you name it, and live events and so forth. So it's been a bit of a time. But one thing, Todd, and I was saying to Todd too, that this festival that Soulogy put together brought in a lot of high vibe people, and it just brought things to another level, which we didn't get to experience. I haven't been able to experience, because we get some really beautiful people coming into the events and stuff like that, which is great. But there was something really super exceptional about this last thing that we just finished. So. And when we decided to extend and have the opportunity to kind of have a few shows, and it's quite different. Like Todd and I were talking about, when we're, having a dialogue face to face rather online. So we thought, well, let's start with the brothers. And since we're going to be here till the 10th, we're not having another episode of Advancing Consciousness for another week later. So things are getting delayed a little further. But in essence, we're going to share this on that platform also, to give people the opportunity to enjoy our conversation. And like Todd was saying, our conversations tend to expand and go all over the place in a very powerful way. And I think a lot of the things we discussed last night were things that we haven't really talked openly about, and a lot of the stuff I put out there is pretty elaborate. But sometimes we can go even further, and that's what we were doing, because of the fact that we were having a very kind of explorative, expansive type of conversation. Yes, exactly, with no specific topic at that point, and it was just it just unfolded the way it needed to unfold. So. Anyways, Todd, I
remember. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just saying. Where did you want to start?
Well, I do remember one question I had at the end of the night that I cataloged to carry over to the next conversation. Let me just see. Was there something else? Oh, and I'll remember the question.
Okay.
But our sister. Let me pull her back up. Judy Baker, who, for everyone, I know I wasn't supposed to say anything, but Judy Baker, I just won't get specific. She gifted some tickets to the Soulogy Fest, and people benefited from that. So I just want to say thank you. But I don't know where it was. I think it was on the when you and Jason and I were up there on Sunday, or maybe it was even Monday. I noticed she had asked this question. And so she asked it again, so I thought we'd give her the respect. She says, please ask Franco, where does common sense come from? Why do some seem to have it and others not?
Well, it's a good question. It's a very interesting question, because in a sense, where does common sense come? Common sense, we have to understand our makeup. And I know I've explored this before, and I've shared it with people. We have an innate consciousness, which is the makeup of our body, that has many, many years, or basically 15,000 years of experience. You got a human entity that keeps it, what do you call it? Reincarnating and so forth, that continues to expand. And then, of course, we have these multidimensional souls that come into place. But we have an overall consciousness. And that overall consciousness itself takes all this information and so forth and determines what would be considered something that makes absolute sense to its journey. This is the interesting thing. So when we throw the idea of common sense, that common sense is experience based on observation, based on what we want to create in our reality. And then we use that common sense or with that sense of navigating where we go and what we do. So the interesting part is sometimes it looks like we don't have common sense because of the fact that we really filter what we're receiving, experiencing, and so forth, so that we actually shape what we want to intake for ourselves. So you say, well, is that lack of common sense, or is that there's another purpose to that? Well, there is a purpose to that. And the purpose around that is right now, this is the only data I want to use to give me a particular experience and a particular opportunity to possibly create a shift within myself. This is why I say when we are connecting with ourselves more and we become observers, our capacities to take in this information and then determine how we direct things, like our choices and so forth, will expand. And that will reflect like, oh, there's more common sense put into the mix. Now, the other thing that actually shifts the common sense is programming. A lot has to do with programming. So if we're heavily conditioned and programmed to see things a certain way and have very strong beliefs and patterns within ourselves, then if something does not match the beliefs, the patterns, and the programs, we don't see it or we totally negate it. So that the only thing we're allowing to come in is whatever. So for example, if we're so dialed up and whatever else to the mainstream media, and they're saying, this is the way it is, this is how it should work, and all of that stuff going on, if all of that is in play, then what happens is even different information is not even coming into your presence. You're not even acknowledging it. Like, for example, even with Kimberly, I mean, she had a very interesting experience a little while ago with a family member where, to do with all this vax stuff and whatever else going on. And this particular individual, was open to receive information, but no matter what information was provided with a lot of scientific backup, with specialists and so forth, because of the belief system and what they wanted to actually see, they only saw bits and pieces of it, and the rest of it was scrapped. So, but that is because of the fact that we isolated that. Now, there's a purpose to that too, because at times the reason we do that is because we've already made an agreement from some level to say, I'm going to go down this path, and I'm okay having whatever that experience is, because it's my wake-up call, it's my opportunity to kind of stimulate everybody around me to shift their consciousness of sorts and actually become more at ease. For example, in Kimberly's case, it was more, okay, I have to allow them to make their own choices, and it's not up to me to tell them, even though I felt compelled to share the information. So that created more freedom and more detachment for, say, Kimberly, but at the same time, the person staged their own journey based on whatever it is. So it's a very interesting question because there's so many factors involved, right? So the thing is, just be observant and look at it, say, well, okay, if I'm going this way or that way, what's promoting it? Is it my beliefs, my stories, my adopted ideas, or is it something that I'm actually looking at the whole picture? See, what happens is the process of awakening, you now do not filter things. You start to look at all of it, all the potentialities. You're looking at all the resources. This is what happens. It's no longer saying, "Oh, I'm just going to give faith to the media or faith to the mainstream stuff," but you're going to look at, okay, I want to see all perspectives. I want to get a deeper understanding of what's going on, how it's going on, and so forth, and then use my own discernment to decide what I'm going to do. Not that I'm going to say, they're telling me to do this, I'm going to do that. And a lot of people do that. But eventually what happens, even with so-called intensified negative experiences or whatever, they say, wait a minute, maybe I should pay more attention to other factors before I make a decision and be more open. This is why when people start to awaken, they start to see more. They start to look more and use that as a navigational component. Now, of course, that also involves connecting with ourselves and the different factors of ourselves too. So that's a very elaborate explanation of what common sense is, but it is very fluid and expansive in that regard. It's really about how much you allow into your decision and your directional points at this point to use.
Okay, so let me kind of go back
Yes.
and make sure that we understand. It sounds like what you're saying is, first of all, when it comes to the question of common sense, it's become common sense to worry about your own common sense and not anybody else's. Because if we're looking at other people, and this is me, I'm not saying this about you, Judy, I'm saying this about me, and really what I observe in many of us, which is natural. It's natural for us to be in this transition, and we're perfectly imperfect. So what I'm saying is that if I'm looking at anyone and saying they don't have common sense or they have more common sense than myself, then I'm really externalizing I'm not utilizing what's being presented or provided for me for internal expansion. I'm basically being distracted by an external situation or person or whatever, belief system. So, it's never them, it's always me, I guess is what I'm saying. So that's kind of like part of what I got from what you said. You were basically turning it back around and explaining what it is, why it is, how it works, and what we can do to enhance it and see it for what it is, and then look beyond for other things that can feed our active consciousness, as you talk about.
Yeah, the other thing too, Todd, and I'm sure all of us have had this experience. You may have, say, family members, a parent, just to use as an example. To them, what makes common sense to them is this way of life. Now, your parents may be turning around, or a parent, whatever, telling you, this makes sense, you should do this. Meanwhile, it makes no sense to you because you're not on the same page. You see something different and more expansive, and you have no interest in following their own common sense. This is why it's important to realize that everybody's going to have their own level of common sense, because it depends on what is the motivator of their observation point at this point. And you made a very good point there. We look at ourselves and say, okay, what makes sense for me? And then if I feel like I want to share, I share, but I have no expectations on what it's going to look like or anything of that nature. I'm fully open to this whole idea of saying I allow everybody to have their own experiences. I am having my own experience, right? So we need to stay flexible in that regards.
Right on. Okay, so we have. So I had a question that I didn't answer or didn't ask last night because we got too tired. But before we go to that, there's another one that kind of took me there, and that was in regard to, I said to you, and you said to me, "Are they ready for this?" So I'm going to bring it out.
Okay.
But so I made the comment. It wasn't really. It was a comment question. I said, and this was based on the context of this comprehensive conversation, which we're going to do the best we can to touch as many aspects of it as possible. So I made the comment, and I said, let me ask you a question. I said, in your opinion or from your perspective, what are your thoughts on what I'm about to say? And I said, it looks to me like, 85, 90, 95% of what I'm looking at or what's being presented in disclosure platforms and conspiracy platforms and even lightworker platforms, although I wouldn't take the percentage that high necessarily with the lightworker platforms, is not even real. I mean, it's programming. I'm talking spaceships, and I'm talking UFOs and secret space and this, that, and the other thing. When we were talking about this, we were talking about some of these specificities or realities of the universe and this quadrant of the universe and the solar system and so on, based on your experience with your planetary recalls, of certain incarnations, as well as in this lifetime and the intel that you receive. So I just kind of wanted to preface it with that, because when this happened, I thought to myself, we're not like, we're not like getting in spacesuits and coming down here as these ancient soul travelers. It almost feels like this is the spacesuit, and we're just dropping in and doing our business, and it just doesn't look like what we saw in the movies and on TV. I don't know. That just kind of came over me last night. I was like, wow. We talked about drop-ins, and you were talking about, because I asked you about your own experience. Is this your first full-blown human aspect experience? You said you had a couple of drop-ins, and we've heard other people talk about it. So, I don't know if that's a really great question or not, but it feels like that. It feels like we took this too literal, and a lot of the programming we're receiving makes it literal, which really is a distraction and distortion. But is the soul, let's just say, is the soul the body? And when I say the body, I'm talking about the infinite body, whereas by analogy, I'm going to get on a spaceship, I'm the body, I'm going to put a suit on and then go on this planet. This suit's going to protect me. Is this physical body the spacesuit, and our essence is dropped into it?
Well, okay. I wouldn't say call it a spacesuit, but I would so a soul itself, when it's not embodied in some form of physicality, and it doesn't matter if it's on one planet or another planet, if it's a Palladian body or a Sirian body or a Turian body, it doesn't matter what body it is. A soul can actually express and experience and go into the depth of the so-called video game or the experience when it drops into what you call a spacesuit, and some people call it a meat suit when it comes to the human experience. But so the soul itself, the multidimensional soul, will drop into a physicality because that's where it can learn, experience, and to actually be able to play a particular role. Now, when we look at it, Gaia is a sentient being. It's the part that holds this human game of sorts. Of course, the bodies is an extension of Gaia in itself, with other inputs that are coming from other physical representations. That's why we talk about the DNAs having each specific. So that's part. Then you have what we call the earthbound soul, which is the human entity, and that has its own characteristics, its own journey for the last 15,000 years, and then the multi-dimensional soul comes in. So it creates a beautiful alignment and marriage so that it can experience itself in its that. So when we're looking at it, say, yeah, this is a vehicle. This is the way that you can actually play on this physical playground we call Earth and we call human at this point, and be able to have the facilities to receive sensorial inputs, to experience emotions, to experience everything. Without it, a soul, because I've seen it many times, and people that have had out-of-body experience, once you leave out of it, you have no sensory input at all. As a soul, you're just a field of energy with information and so forth, but you're not able to experience yourself in any part of it at all. But when you're in a physicality, that gives us the opportunity to experience something that you would not normally be able to experience at all without it. And, every physicality on every planet, so every planet is a different playground, every physicality is a different vehicle, and each vehicle has a certain capability to have certain experiences. So you can't say, well, one physicality is better than another going, say, to another planet. You can't say one soul is better than another either. It depends on how many experiences it had, whatever it is, and how much it's gained in experiential enrichment. But when it comes to here, it's another facet dropping in, coming into play, do whatever it chooses to do. So it is a vehicle. Now, this particular vehicle, this particular playground has a lot of extreme benefits in comparison to other physicality. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but there is a very unique way of expressing and experiencing, and the feedback and the intensities and the limits of polarity and the limits and the separational part, which is not very easy to replicate anywhere else than here to the same degree. I'm not saying it doesn't exist anywhere else, but to the same degree. So really, what are we looking at? We're looking at a vehicle that has a lot of options, a lot of capability, and it's very and now the beauty of all of this is because we stayed in a stuck state for a long time. Now we're a really super fast track, and this fast track gives us an opportunity to compress as many different experiences and moving a lot quicker in motion as we evolve in it, and as we go from that inverted world to the organic world, and also going into higher dimensions and so forth. So
Yeah, I was speaking to you. I told you that it never separates, but it's separated. And you started to go into the second question. I had one already, and then there was another one coming up behind it. And you started going into that, so we can come back to that, because I remember, because it's important, because I remember having the part of the conversation that triggered all this or precipitated. But before we go there, the question that I didn't ask last night, and we've kind of talked about it before on this show, and you and I have talked about it. I know everything is one. And in dimension, we even talked about this last night. You know, why do these playgrounds exist? Because when we're in a certain level or state, it really gets kind of boring, basically, because we are an expansive consciousness or energy. But what I was wondering about, excuse me, is I noticed that at the Soulogy Fest, there was a lot of what I would call non-physical presence. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, and we could get into the descriptions, but just stick with the basics: elementals, nature beings, galactics, and so on. And it was very obvious that there were a lot more souls or energies in attendance than the physical 100 people that were there. So knowing that everything eventually goes one, everyone in this room, we're going to be one, whatever. But in this place that we're in right now, it really feels like, even though we've embodied a lot of the aspects that brought us to the party, it really feels like that there's family around us. Mm-hmm. And are these aspects no different than our physical friends? Our physical friends, like say the friends that we came across, are they related? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. You're right. Even last night when we were having a conversation, we had a lot of presence showing up there in what we would call non-form, but they had a form, even though they weren't, in the same solidified, what looks like solidified state. What's going on here with the changes that are going on here? There's a lot of attention and focus of our brother sister souls, even in non-form, that are anxious to be observing, so that it would get a lot more skills and able to observe in itself, so that if it gets the opportunity to take on a form, say on this playground, or the fact to extrapolate something from what's being experienced here and bring it back to their play. You're right, because while we were at the Soulogy Fest, we had a lot of beings visiting. We also had a lot of energy consciousnesses, sometimes referred to as orbs and what else. But a lot of them, what they were doing is observing, but there were some specific ones that were kind of brought in to help bring the energy to a certain level. Okay, so for example, when certain speakers or presenters, whatever was there, you would have more of a gathering of sorts to hold a specific energy and to kind of assist others that were there, so that more would be affected by it. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're just watching it online, that there was not some presence wherever the individuals were at the time. So when we're looking at it, right now, I mean, over the years, Todd, uh, I've always had presence coming and going, especially when we're doing workshops and things of that nature. But there's been lately a lot more presence and more often, no matter what we're doing, depending on what's going on, right? So when we get a gathering of that nature, we're talking about brother sister souls that may be not in bodies, or others that actually are in bodies on another planet that can actually step into it. Now, do they need a vehicle like a ship to get here? We have to understand when you get to a certain level, you can appear without appearing, because all of us do to some degree. We don't always realize it. We can go in an altered state and we can see an alternate world. We can go on a different planet or something of that nature. Now, you may not present the same type of physicality in the same solidified or what we call dense form. You may be more of a light form, but you're still observing. You're contributing and you're also receiving at the same time during that period of time. So that's what our brother sister souls are doing. Now, there are many that are from our soul families that we have arrangements with, in a sense, where they feel, okay, we're not embodied in, say, planet Earth and these physicalities, but we want to play a role because every advancement you make not only advances the oversoul, it advances the whole cluster of the soul families, right? At times, we even have our own twin soul actually maybe not take a solid form, but can present there to hold a certain energy and so forth. So there's a lot that's going on. And then, of course, because the fact that we have each of our DNA strands is connected to a specific species, some of those species do come to kind of hold a very specific energy to help that DNA reactivate to a certain point. And usually it's much more effective when we're doing something very specific and we're together, because the energies get multiplied. You know, the whole thing where two or more are, we create a much more powerful energetic field. So when you have a lot of different energies, even if there's variations, there is a commonality of intent while that's happening. So there's a very specific energy. So when they come in, they can find themselves a little bit more effective to activate certain dormant DNA, because each of the DNAs are transmitters, receivers.
Yeah, good stuff. The other thing was one of the things we talked about last night, which we've talked about before, but your explanation last night, which I can't remember the details, so hopefully you're gonna kick in here. But and that was the uniqueness of the Earth experience. And I think you said quite a bit, and I just kind of came back and said, yeah. So what you're saying is, for example, where we were sitting in the condo, if one of our Star Family brothers or sisters dropped into, just say, my body in that moment, all the things that they could do that weren't accessible in most all other planetary experiences, it's certainly not to the depth of the sensory experience, and also the magnitude of what could be experienced. And I told Franco, I said, well, so if I was dropped into Todd, I could walk across the street, I could put my hands in the red sand, I could go across to the other side of the street and have a burger. You know, I could feel the wind. I mean, there's so many things that I got out of what you were saying. I really began to understand there were so many things at our fingertips in a 500-foot radius, like in the example I was given last night. And I just wanted to go back to that, because for me, it really, and I, you know me, I'm the human as a hero, and I believe Earth is a very, very, very special place. But I even went further, because what you told me, I thought, wow, I mean, it's all right in front of us. I mean, we can get the light from this lamp. We can feel the air from this fan. You know, we can tap on a computer and go on the internet. I mean, there's so many things, and they're all in the physical matter 3D that I really walked away, or went away that last night with an even higher appreciation for not just what we're doing, but where we're at. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point we were talking about last night is that the range
Mm,
of
yeah.
experience that we have capable of having here in this particular human form and now on this particular playground is quite expansive in comparison to other planets. For example, well, let's look at it this way. Um, the level of free will, the
Mm,
level of choice, the level of receptors of how to have the experience, and the variance, the variety, because even the variety of plant life, the variety of the
mhm,
animal kingdom, oceanic kingdom,
mhm,
and so forth, all the other kingdoms and so forth that exist here, what we call our sentient brother, sister, soul, the variance is not something that's common on other planets. But we have to understand the plants and the animal kingdoms and all the other sentient beings, each one hold a very specific frequency. Each one are experiencing this game of
mhm,
life we call, and each one is allowing us to experience or get a feedback of how that even plays out. The other part of it that we also want to understand is that not only the feedback that we're getting, that the way our bodies are tuned,
mhm,
okay, that it actually can receive all of that. And this is why some of the
mhm.
people that are starting to get more online can sense an earthquake thousands of miles away and feel the dizziness,
Right.
or be able to feel an a volcano erupting, or whatever it is, or what's happening to a cluster of brother sister souls or animals and whatever else. Uh, because of the fact that we have that strong of a connection and profoundness of that. Now, what many of us have done is that we've judged the experience through the programming, of course, saying this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is painful, this is traumatic, or whatever it is,
Mhm,
that we feel that the game is not all that much fun, and it's only pain. What do you call it? Pain focused, or whatever you want to call it.
mhm,
But in fact, what ends up happening is that once we take that out, we could see actually the expansiveness. Now, you pointed out on something, and we talked about it last night. Is that there are many souls that are in non-form at this point in time because they've stepped out. It could be human entities. It could be also sometimes it's souls. And many of us create such openings that we allow them to step in our bodies
mhm,
and share it temporarily. Now, they can't reside, but they can share it. Why did they come in? Two things. One is because they want to get a feedback of the experience of the individual having there.
mhm,
But the second thing was is also to share their perspective outside of the program. Because what happens to people? I've dealt with a lot of people, and I'm sure many other people that are facilitators or even just had the experience personally themselves. What ends up happening is when you're out of the ego realm, the judgment realm, the program realm, okay, you get a more bird's eye view. You have a more expansive view. You see the game for what it is more.
mhm,
It's a game and the opportunities in the game. But when we get so caught up in the game, in the programs and so forth, and we get tunnel vision, we're looking at the micro and making it into the macro. From that little micro component of it, we're not seeing the whole thing, and it can feel heavy. It can feel whatever it is. So some of these souls will come in and body and stimulate that
mhm,
for us, right? In a sense, they're gaining something from it too because they get to see from that micro
mhm,
viewpoint. Because a lot of times, like even our brother sister aliens, all right,
mhm,
uh, why would they be so interested? And why would they sometimes step into other people's bodies?
mhm,
Again, there's always permission allowed, okay, or it'd say, okay, I'll move out of the way for a while so that you can go in and do it because they want to get an understanding from their bird's eye view and not having the human experience. So they don't have a memory of what is the perceived realism
mhm,
of the intensity of polarization, that they love to step in to see it a little more clearly
mhm,
so that they're more qualified to share when they're in a bird's eye view and have an understanding of where we're at So it's like, okay, I know what you're dealing with and whatever else, this is what we can provide, right?
So on one hand, they're getting code that they don't have, and on the other hand, they're saying, hey,
Yes.
now that I've looked at this, we've got a wealth of experience here you might be able to use.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, look at all the energies that are coming in, the codes that are coming in and so forth. Guess what's happening? There's a lot of monitoring. There's a lot of feedback, a lot of simulations going on to get that feedback, to know what code to launch next, what changes to that. But at the same time, it's not out of our hands because we're involved. A lot of times we're not conscious of it. You know, they're saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what it looks like. We've simulated. This is what's going on. Again, do you want to be participating with that? Because some of the codes will turn on certain people and not turn on other people. Now, everybody receives the code, but they're not ready to turn it on. And that's okay, right? So in a sense, it's all done that. But who's they? They are our brothers, sisters, souls, and so forth that we are intimately working with, even though when our mind says no, you know, it's being done for us. That's not the case. And that is an agreement that we've all made, that it's not to be done for us so it doesn't disempower us, right? So there's no, you know, it's a lot of times people think, okay, they'll come in and save us and they'll fix our problems and do this and do that, or, you know, intervene because there's all these nasty people there or nasty playmates and so forth. But no, they work with us, but we're the ones that are actually, you know, inviting them in and so forth. But they will not listen to us going in and say, can you save us? Can you save us? You know, whatever, because they know that that is not of service, first of all. Second of all, that's only the ego saying, save me. It's not your higher self or your highest self, which is the combination of all. That's saying, no, I want to do it myself, you know, and not only do it myself, I can experiment on something I would not be able to unless I did so.
A quick yes, no, because I got to hear you say this. So we talked a little bit about energies that could attach temporarily to an individual.
Right.
Would it be safe to say that any type of connection that's occurred in this realm, we'll just keep it to this realm, is by agreement?
Well, everything is by agreement.
I mean, if you have, you know, because we have people that are navigating their way through something's attacking me, and we've all been there, and we're now getting to a place where we're becoming, we're beginning to understand that whatever comes around us or whatever is around us is us.
Right.
So, but I mean, from you know, going back to, you know, going through the ties and the connections, such as those that were observing us last night when I was talking about earlier, what is this? Is this family around us? Even something, I guess what I'm saying is there's really, from an energetic standpoint or even a contract or agreement standpoint, there's no difference between my mother-in-law who is a total antagonist. I'm making this up because I don't know her, and let's say a non-physical entity that comes in to play that antagonist role. I mean, there's really no difference, is there?
There isn't no difference, absolutely. And it's all agreed upon. So the thing is, if we're having what we can call a negative experience, just as a some reference point here. So you're having a negative experience. And that negative experience is giving you an opportunity to kind of get an understanding of how it's going. But what ends up happening is there's other levels of it that, unless it becomes part of it, you're not getting it. It's like sometimes, until we get asked, we don't take a step more, even though we've been nudged, we've been suggested, you know, we've been pushed around here and there. But sometimes, most of us, to some degree or another, get to the point you need a boot in the ass sort of thing. So what ends up happening is, if you got a lot of fears, you got a lot of energies that are a low vibration, then it kind of creates an opening, and it's an agreed opening to let another energy that is not you exclusively, which is another facet of you anyways, that can engage and bring that negative or that polarized energy even further up, which is representative to the boot in the ass sort of thing, then it's used for that, right? So it's an agreement because, the idea of being a victim is a made-up construct that was in the inverted matrix and so forth. And I know some people would disagree with this. That's fine. That's okay. Eventually, what happens is you get to a level of consciousness where you have a deeper understanding of things. Guess what? You'll say, oh, yeah, that makes total sense, right? But the whole thing about the victim and victimized and so forth, those are roles that are played. So what happens if we're holding a victim state, not only are we going to have human interactions that may play out the victim-victimizer, but we can also have entities or lower energies also participating. But why is it there? Is it making a mistake? No. It's because of the fact that we haven't got to the completion point of that experience.
They're making it louder and louder and louder until you get it. Okay?
Correct.
Which is another. Asking the question. Okay, so I want to go back. That's really important. What's happening right now? I've gotten some feedback from people in regard to the loudness. Like my friend wrote in that post that I was trying to tell you about, the lion in the room that you won't face,
right,
and how it's getting bigger, and it's not just fading away because the collective is expanding together. It's at an individual level. We all have to take every step. But before we get to that, just going back real quick to the uniqueness of the Earth planetary experience. We know that there's a much larger palette of experience but also you had just touched on this tonight. I don't think we really understand or appreciate, and that's okay because we're gaining at an extraordinary range. From what I understand, most of the playgrounds can happen because it's very controlled. Free will, like you were saying, in a certain parameter. It's in this guideline. So everybody's got the free will, but you come here to play on this playground, you only get this much to play with. And you make, and you're okay with that, right? And the thing is, too, the uniqueness here is the free will, but also the capacities to be able to upgrade every part of the experience with a lot more ease, or in this case, it may not have seemed that way for so long because we were in that locked up state, but it's a very open platform so that you can upgrade it very, very clearly. So one of the things I wanted to mention, most of the planets are geared for a certain level of consciousness, okay? So say you go to a planet that's 6th dimension, and what ends up happening in 6th dimension? Well, that level of consciousness is the prevalent navigator of what they experience in that form of density and that form of operating system. But what ends up happening is on this planet here, it was designed in such a fashion that it was able to evolve and start off with organic, what we can call organic third dimensional consciousness, and able to expand it even further into 4th, 5th, 6th, and all the way up to 9th at that time. But now it's even opened up to go even further, and it can go up to 12 at this point if you chose to do so. The other uniqueness about it is the fact that besides the multidimensional aspect of it and how quickly we can move through all of this here, is that the positioning of our planet within the center of the quadrant, it's like the hub of the quadrant
of the galaxy and also the arrangements of all of the different planets and their contributing energies through it makes it a very expansive bandwidth, very expansive opportunity to be able to access many different resources and inputs that you don't get elsewhere.
Right.
This is why so many souls want to come here, because it's I want my turn to go play there. And we did have quite an explosive point where, our population grew tremendously and over a short period of time. But that was because many more wanted to be involved. And then the other thing that was involved is that allowing many other souls to be part of the contribution of the dance of this evolvement that we were going through. So when you look at the big picture, there's such a capacities of experience here. Because look at it this way, and I know I mentioned it to you last night. I've worked with souls that left and so forth. They may, the soul is recording everything, is bringing multidimensional, but it can get easily lost also in the game, okay? Because there's a lot of feedback coming back from the body, a lot of feedback from the human entity, from the surroundings and so forth. And then, of course, the ego, which is that artificial intelligence, is playing a very difficult role or a very closed loop or an inverted world, that it becomes very difficult for it to navigate. So what ends up happening, and I know we could expand further, but we'll play with that possibly another time, or maybe we will. What ends up happening is that the soul gets to a point and says, okay, I can't make more progress here. I'm talking about the multidimensional soul, and says, okay, I'm going to leave. Now, the departure could be any form. It could be a departure, say, I'm going to leave and let another soul take the body with the human entity and everything else, or the fact that it drops, basically separates. The body goes back into Earth, and the human entity goes and waits for something else, and the soul leaves. But each time I've connected with the souls, that specifically if they went through what it perceived a very difficult time, once it stepped out of the body and had just a short period of time of integration, they get to the point of going, holy shit, that wasn't that hard. I mean, I could have changed every part of it. And it's because it's no longer caught up into that. And I've seen people that have been so fearful, so like, beam me up, Scotty. I want to exit or go through suicide or whatever it is. And then I even go, holy shit, I missed out on that opportunity. Now do I have to go back? And I'm going, okay, can I get back in line to see if I can get another body? Now, there's another thing, and I was going to, if we want to play with that or not, this swapping thing. I don't know if you wanted to touch bases with that or you.
Let's go back to.
Okay, go ahead.
No, because this is really good. Okay, so there's a two-pronged thing. It's like one answer in both, or one question in both.
Okay.
The answer will answer both.
Okay.
So you have people who are. It's the lion in the room.
Right.
We all have it to a degree or another, but people talked a lot about the Great Divide for a long time, and in this post that I was telling you about that my friend Yvonne wrote, one explanation was what I would consider almost like the Soulogy Fest energy.
Right.
Like I don't even know if you can put words to it, but it's kind of organic, allowance, flow is a part of it. Getting out of the way, shutting up, turning off the mind, whatever. And then the other one is what we've all faced from time to time, and may very well again, and that's the lion in the room. You went into a description in regard to what happens to us when we're in that state. What happens when the soul is ready to get out here, but the human aspect needs to do some things. So there's almost like a crash course, like a fast track. And a lot of people are talking about very intensive situations and energies. I've even heard some people being committed. And these are light workers. These are, so could you go back to that? Because I can't remember what the second part that's going to be answered by the same question. But could you, I know what it was. It's what you just said. when these souls disincarnate and they get all the information and they pull and they have the tunnel vision is no longer there, and they reach a point and they go, oh my God, I could have done this, 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 and this. So on one hand, you have you have us and we're the lion in the room.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, we have at least, it seems, a parallel thread of going, oh, wow, this is how it works. Now let's see what I can do. So I think they're kind of mixed together. What's happening to a person or to me when we start to go through an intensive scenario, and if you could explain a little bit about, the soul is ready to go out here, but in order to get there, the body's got to get to that point, and so it might require, and there seems to be a lot of that fast tracking, fast-paced, intensive, successive, dramatic or traumatic episodes happening, or whatever the case is. What's your advice to people? What's happening there? What's your advice to people that are in that situation, and also to the people that were in that Soulogy Fest atmosphere, which is all over the world, I'm sure? Is there a way we can kind of sharpen our pencils to maximize the potential of what we can do over here, so that when we get to the other side, we're not going, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the thing is, like you said, if the soul wants to move forward in a specific way, and because of all the programming, conditioning, the fears and the responses and so forth are keeping it, like, for example, like you were saying, the lion in the room, we may have something that we have within ourselves that we are ignoring, ignoring an old trauma or an old idea that, again, it's always an idea. It's a program around that was trauma, this was this or that. And it's almost like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. But because you're not seeing it and you're not untangling yourself or freeing from yourself, your progress of moving forward is like in a fear mode, taking baby steps, and your soul saying, hey, wait a minute, we have an agreement to do something much more powerful. The fact is, we want to catch the wave. We want to really do something profound here. How can we do that? So in essence, at that point, the soul will be a lot more active to kind of make the room brighter, to make it more intensified, and bring any other playmates along if necessary, that are in human form, of course, to play any specific roles. But then also the energies coming in and so forth will trigger certain emotional charges or whatever else, so that we actually have to go look at that story or program or whatever we had. So we don't ignore it. It's like, I see it there, but I don't want to look at it. And that's what ends up happening. How many times have you had the conversation with somebody and you start having a conversation and you bring something up and they say, no, I don't want to go there. It's too painful, right? That's the line, right?
I've been saying that recently.
Okay.
People ask me something like, I don't want to talk about that.
Yes, exactly. So I don't want to talk about that. It's too painful or whatever. And I've had many people say, don't go there. And I had a family member some years ago. There was a death in the family and whatever else, and they had this whole thing about that they felt a part of responsibility and whatever else. And then one day we were just having a conversation, and all of a sudden I just mentioned it, and I said, well, did you ever make peace and look at what was going on here? And automatically it's like, no, I don't want to go there. It's too painful. I don't want to look at it. So many of us all have different levels of saying, I'm not ready to look at this. I'm not ready to do that. What's happening now? Everything is gearing us to, really ramp things up so that you start to see it, and you have to face it. You have to, and when I say face it, is take the opportunity to look at it. Now, the other thing is, it doesn't have to be painful, but sometimes we have such a connection that is painful. It may feel that way. So what suggestion I will have for people, and this goes also through personal experience, and say, okay, I'm ignoring this, but what I'm going to do now, I choose to see it with the most advanced version of myself, and also accessing my highest level of consciousness and my source essence with pure love. And I'm going to look at this lion. I'm going to look at whatever that is, and I'm just going to observe it. I'm not going to dive into it. I'm going to observe it. When you do it from that perspective, it looks very different. And that lion could be a kitty cat. Okay, but it was made to look like a line because we kept saying, no, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at it. And then we kept saying it's too painful. So all of a sudden it went from a little kitty cat to a lion, type of thing. So now what's happening to people, if everybody's kind of seeing that it doesn't matter how much choice you make to ignore anything of our lives. It's coming to the surface one way. We're getting multiple opportunities, and each of the opportunities at times are getting even stronger for us to really look at that, so that in fact we get to face it. Because when people say, well, what's slowing down the progress, for the collective evolution, but even the person's personal evolution or personal trend. Well, yeah, but look at it, Todd. Yeah. How many people say to you, come on?
No,
I'm in a hurry, but then at the same time, maybe I'm not in that much of a hurry to look at this one.
Well, it's like what you said about the people that disincarnate, that you connected with even the suicides. How they, I've said it, but I'm starting to realize now, and that's why the second part of that statement or question was, there are people that are swimming in the 5D plus Kool-Aid. Right. It's very new. It's very novel. It certainly doesn't operate the way we used to operate, and it kind of holds you. To an integrity line, which is kind of like walk the talk. But for example, you step into an arena or you make a choice or whatever the case is, you don't look back.
Right.
Like there's none of that. It's a very much a present moment. It feels like a very present moment thing. None of the constructs we can take with us. How do you see that happening? Is there a way people can maximize their potential quickly? Or is it just, hey, keep doing what you're doing? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is, too, like, for example, the light workers and stuff like that. I'm not here to offend anybody, but I'm just going to make it very, very clear. You could turn around and say, oh, I just want to play with love and light, love and light, love and light. I don't want to look at anything else, right? And that's like, there's a lion there. I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to look at the sun, rainbows, and, and all of this other stuff, right? Now, so we can do that, but you know what's going to happen? The more you try to focus on that, you're going to start having the other part. It's not because, I got to face the negative. If I want to be love and light, even at a higher level, I got to embrace all of it. And when I say embrace, meaning I look at all and what it is through the eyes of love, and you'll see that that thing that's dragging, that thing that's holding your vibration at a certain level is actually going to transmute, and no longer have the same grip and hold and so forth. So the point is, like, for example, people say, positive, 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 positive. But you know what happens with positive, positive, positive? You emphasize negative, negative, negative. Eventually, you're going to have to let it merge. And then you see the whole. You're never going to see the whole on being one spectrum versus the other, right? But I'm not saying you have to now jump into the dark. You welcome it within that, and then it just transforms. It becomes a holistic dance. Source, your essence, your very being is the whole thing. It's not polarized. Okay? What we call 0 point, oneness, all of that is all that beautiful wholeness, right? You're going to say something? Or?
No.
Oh.
I'm in the rhythms.
Oh, yeah.
Just watching everything.
Okay. Yeah, so in all of that, what I was saying is it's not so much going in, I got to look at all my stuff or whatever it is. It's just say, I'm open to see every facet of myself. I will observe what no longer serves me. I will acknowledge it, thank it, love it, and free it. You're not going to go look at it and say, oh, this is horrible, I got to get rid of it. No, you're going to look at it. I'm going to look at it because I have a whole different perspective now than I had before. Look at it this way. If you had an incident 10 years ago, your viewpoint of that time was very different than it is today.
It is. I was a young 10 years ago.
There you go. Okay.
Well, like 10 years in a day.
Yeah. So here you are. You're looking at it. You've expanded. Your understanding's expanded. You're not going to look at it the same way. First of all. Second of all, that thing, it doesn't serve you anymore like it used to. It served you at that time. So it's going to change all of that. So for us, like you were saying earlier about not looking at the lion, the lion or the tiger in the room, is basically saying, hey, I'm going to look at everything, see what serves or doesn't serve, and then I'll just let those parts go free. I'm not going to have any judgment about it. I'm not going to have right, wrong, good, bad about it or anything like that. Everything is just going to be seen through the views of
that's a nice one, but I think if you don't look at the lion, everything does leave anyway. It's only the lion. You know what I mean? I've watched you do like 3 or 4 times. You call it a process.
Right.
I'm going. You give a commentary, and then you'll mix it in with whatever you're talking about, and you go through this process. So I've always been big on affirmations on a personal level, because as Kimberly knows now, I talk to myself all day long, and also like mantras, kind of as a programming kind of device. But what I noticed about your process is, in the last time I saw it was at Soulogy Fest, was, if I'm not mistaken, you did it in the other 2 that I saw too. And that is, you really go through this process within the process of identifying the parts of you that we are bringing into alignment, would be the diplomatic way to say it. So the ego, the mind, and such, these things that kind of made us feel smaller or were part of the programming or conditioning. But you have this thing where you, and it's not just lip service. You actually bring the ego, for instance, we just use the ego or the mind, you bring it into your total essence and your total being. And I just thought I would mention it because it we say a lot of things and we don't do it.
Right.
But I really, because I've actually done that, time and time again, as you elevate, and then you find out that you got some other stuff to work on. It gets rid of the judgment. It makes me feel better. But I don't know how long you've been doing that. How important is that? Because it really seems like it's a very important thing to make peace and identify and actually be. We talk about, I need to own my galactic, or I need to be my angelic, or I need to be my higher self. But these things are part of us, aren't they? I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's a matter of embracing every part of it, including the ego, because a lot of people think that, the ego is a bad thing. And yeah, it served, of course, and it provided the polarity separation. It provided the inverted world, which is part of the experience. But you want to embrace every part of you. Embrace what you think was good, what was bad, what was what. It doesn't matter. So it's a matter of embracing it. Once you embrace it, it changes its form. It changes, like that lion becomes the kitty cat, and then you can actually appreciate for what that is. So by embracing everything and seeing that was a beautiful creation, no matter what polarization was involved in it at the time, it actually doesn't, hold a very stagnant, very intense, fear-based energy about it. You see it, you see it as a beautiful creation, because of course we've had to create everything. It doesn't matter what we've adopted as part of our experience. Everything was created by ourselves, and we are the ones that go through the process. So it's really the importance of looking at every aspect of ourselves as we go along, and not to say, well, this was a good part of me and this was a bad part of me, or anything of that nature. It makes it a lot easier. And this is why the process that I've shared many times now, you acknowledge whatever it is. Okay, you're going to acknowledge whatever story program you have ever had. You're going to acknowledge that whatever choice you made or didn't make. You're going to acknowledge, what you labeled as that experience, or whatever it was at that time, traumatic or not, who was involved or not involved. It doesn't matter. So you're gonna acknowledge all of it, and then you're gonna go through the process of thinking, because there are aspects of yourself that played very specific roles, and you yourself have made specific choices to provide a specific opportunity and a specific experience within that opportunity. So by acknowledging, thank it, and then once you've done that, and I mean genuine thanking, you're basically going to look at, what did I learn from it? What did I experience from it? Okay, like for example, you can go to an amusement park and you go on a really wild roller coaster, right? It could upset your stomach, and you can be tossing your lunch, for example. Okay, so here you went on this beautiful ride. What are you going to go? You're going to look at it and say, well, I didn't like that ride because I lost my lunch. You're going to look at that ride and say, wow, that pushed me to the limits. I got to see how things, and yeah, after that, I even tossed my lunch. Now I can go have another treat. But, at the same time, you're going to look at all of that, and it's got a different view. Like somebody had used this example years ago. I'm just going to borrow it. Imagine this. You go and you're driving down the street and somebody bumps you with their car, okay? And whiplash, and you're feeling all this thing, and you're gonna build that day, what do you call it? Violated your space and your whatever. So here's that incident, a little bump, this and that. Now, you go to the amusement park and you go to the bumper cars, and you're now way harder, hitting each other, and you're being tossed around, your neck is twisting all over the place. That one's fun, but the other one wasn't. Why? Because of perceived perception. I paid to go have fun here. That one was surprise, but there wasn't a surprise because it was still agreed upon. See, that's how it changes. So we have to look at our life too. It's like, you got to look at it as the bumper car, not that somebody bumped me. Even though somebody bumped me, you go, hey, cool, I got a little jolt, whatever. And look at what you gain from that experience, because it is just play. This is why, putting the focus on, I'm here to play and having fun, I'm going to have fun. You see it very differently, and you experience everything very differently. Everything moves. For example, if you have an incident happen and you label it as bad, you identify by it, and it's so hard to move. But if you have the same experience and you see it, wow, that was an interesting experience. What was I trying to experience there? What did I learn from it? What did I gain from it? It's a whole different, so it comes in and goes out very easily. It's not defined or attached anymore. You can define it temporarily, but it just moves along, because now you just saw it as just a sequence of experience rather than something happened to me or whatever it is. Big difference. And the reason I'm sharing all of this is because we've done a lot of that in our lives. We've had a lot of different experiences. And this is why it's so important to acknowledge it, thank it, love it, because it shifts us from somebody did this to me, and the fact is, yeah, I was in the bumper car, and yeah, I'm expecting people to bump me, but I'm going to bump somebody else. I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to see how far I can push this, rather than, I'm in my constructed little environment, and anybody touches me, it's going to be shit, man, big time, type of thing. So it's very different how we perceive it, and that's why it becomes easier to clear. A lot of people say, well, we got to purge, we got to forgive ourselves, and we got to heal, and whatever else, right? Well, that's a perspective. Yeah, you could say, well, I got to heal, but what are you healing? You're healing a wound. Is it really a wound, or is it just a series of experiences that you're going to acknowledge, thank and love, and let it go? Because in essence, all you're doing is transforming. You're shifting the attention that you give into an experience to a broader experience, and then it changes the whole dynamics of it, and you move through it. So even when somebody's having an ailment, it's not about healing the ailment, it's about shifting some part of it so that you're not constructing or supporting that level of experience that was there before. Because even if you did the test, anybody did the test, and you say, well, I got to heal from this wound, versus, yeah, I'm ready to shift this. So I'm going to take a look at it, get what I can get out of it, and then move on. Very different approach, but one is easy. The other one is like, oh, this is going to be a process. And the same thing with work. I got to work on myself. I got to look at some of my stuff, and I'm going to see what still applies and what doesn't apply and what I can get done with and clear it out. Hey, I'm easy. I'm a multidimensional being. I'm moving through this. I signed up to come and play, and yeah, I came to play. This is the thing. When we realize our true nature, that we've come here to play, and this is the excitement we bring when we enter. That's why it's so important to look at some of our entry point and say, why did I come here? Did I come here to have trauma? Did I come here to get stuck? Yeah, I could have. I tried some of that. That was pretty cool. But I came here to have some fun, to have sensorial experiences, to be able to do something I wasn't able to do before in other non-form and other forms on other playgrounds. So I'm going to maximize this. I'm going to go skydiving in life. That I mean, skydiving. I'm going to live life to the max. And who cares what the outcome is? Because I'm going to do some amazing things while I'm doing this, while I'm having fun. What's the use of going to an amusement park if you're going to walk around and just look at everybody else having rides, and you're going to go on the little pony ride or something of that nature, instead of going, I'm going to go on that one and 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 have an enriched experience.
And victim consciousness.
Yes.
So it's funny you were talking about I'm a multidimensional being, and I actually have been feeling that way in the last week or so, thinking, I'm driving around going, we were talking about this. I was talking about how we have these tapes playing in our head.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about the different ones. Oh, you can't do that, or how you're going to do that, or you're not good enough, and all the basics. But and other people have talked about it,
mm-hmm.
how they're fading away, and how
mm-hmm.
you're like looking at them and just going, oh, that's you. Well, you're not driving the car anymore, or whatever. But victim consciousness / I'm a multidimensional being. It feels like if it's happening to me, it's going to be happening to other people. I'm sure, And I'm literally, even though I'm still in this suit, I'm a multidimensional being.
Right.
I'm driving down through the desert, and there's these trucks, coming the other way, and they were driving way over the speed limit. And I'm thinking, wow, if they hit me, I'm toast. And I thought, well, so what? I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop living. I mean, it's really weird. People are talking about how a lot of the intel that they're receiving, in a nutshell, in layman's terms, is we are actually ascending without physically dying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so as a part of that, if that's absolutely what's happening, which I believe it is, or at least we have the opportunity, when is victim consciousness going to go away?
It's going away as we're experiencing life, because we come to the realization that we are the creator. We create our own experience. We observe our creation. For example, like the example you just gave, you can be driving down a highway, okay, and there's all these trucks that are going really fast. Yeah, if you look at it from a perspective and say, there's a really high opportunity here to have a crash and get killed or whatever it is. But what stops you from having that incident? You, because it's not something you want to plug into your experience. But at the same time, you could be just down the street driving slowly. There's hardly any cars anywhere. You got the road for yourself. And out of the blue, somebody just comes out of an intersection that wasn't even there before. Bang. And you wake up in non-form.
Right.
What's the difference? It's not because of the scene. It's because, hey, I want to introduce this. Okay? Introduce it for whatever reason. As a checkout point, or as a wake-up call, or as an opportunity to check out and come back in. And when I say check out and back in, have that what you call near-death experience, what it is, because it creates a shift. How many people have had near-death experiences, and then when coming back, they have a different perspective? Because first of all, they see that they don't really die. The physicality is there, they're here, or whatever. They also see that the fact that, whatever happens to physicality doesn't really affect me here, and this is who I am, and this can drop into anybody. And I go, okay, well, I'm not going to be so afraid to die. I'm not going to be so afraid that something is going to happen to me. Because if you want to live life, you can't be, tagged into fear or use that as your navigator. And we're conditioned to this. Come on, as children, we all come in, we have no fear. We're programmed to fear. Fear this, fear that, fear this, yes, no, no, yes, whatever's right, this is good, this is acceptable, that's not acceptable, based on all types of terms. But we don't come in that way. We have very minuscule amount of that. But then the rest of it is just, we condition it. So in essence, we've been programmed to believe that we can be a victim. We can play the role, but there's no such thing. That somebody can hurt us, but that's an idea. Can they? What, they can play a role, but unless we say, I want to have that experience. I really, can you play it out this way and whatever? Okay, we're not always conscious of it because we're dealing from our superconscious state. Our superconscious state a lot of times is, working the stuff behind the scenes of, okay, let's construct this experience, that experience. But there's always a purpose for any construct. Is it going to help us shift forward? Is it going to help us clear out some certain states? Or is it going to be playing a role for other individuals in my life or whatever? There's always a purpose. There's every part of our experience has a purpose for it. It's not meaningless. But at the same time, it's always staged to enrich us in one way or another, Todd. That's the beauty of it, So we came here to live and play and have a blast. The thing is, what a lot of us are doing right now, we started off as a kid coming here, want to taste, want to touch, want to feel, want to experience, want to have ups and downs, want to have whatever. They were conditioned to live a very linear life. You do this, you don't do this, this is the rules, this is whatever. But what's happening now? All of that is expanding and collapsing is because you want to go back to that imaginative, creative, playfulness, have no barriers of what I can do and not do, not being afraid of living to my own terms. This is what's happening. And people are opening up. And then at the same time, all of our constructs that exist on the planet right now that reflect a restricted life is crumbling. Why do we have such massive amount of restrictions playing out right now with whatever reason they're using? To get us to a point to realize how deep we've been in the game for how long. And it's like, hey, no, we're not playing this game anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but, it was great when it served, but it's not serving me right now. I want to be free. I want to be that childlike. I want to be playful. I want to be imaginative. I want to not have ownership and control of each other or whatever it is. I want to be free. Why is a lot of people getting into traveling around the world now? Say, I give up my possessions, or or at least the locked up possessions. Say, I'm going to get in a vehicle, drive around. I'm going to move from one province, state, or country, or whatever it is, or I'm going to leave, change my relationship or connection with family or partners or whatever it is. I want to, because they're now finding that, hey, I'm now going to create another environment, another experience for myself. That's all.
You mentioned that somebody that you know pretty well had in a relatively a decade or whatever has had 4 different souls housed in the human aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as humans we want to know, our human part wants to know how everything works. And that's not really what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting because we all have these seminal moments in our lives when we have these changes. And I like what you said earlier about an aspect drops in, not necessarily solely operate in the body, but it wants to share the space to figure out what's happening, maybe pick up code or whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it has a wider perspective that might be able to help the human entity. So is there a way that, because I know that the soul is a more subtle communicator if you put it and stand it next to the human from the human perspective, because the human talks words and English and does things, and the soul is subtle and intuitive and telepathic. Is there a way for our human aspect to to kind of know when that's happening, or maybe even to check in and find out, has it happened, or is there anything that I need to know, or is there anything I can do? I mean, because really we can communicate with our soul, with our human aspect, with our body, just as we communicate with a dragon or Kuan Yin or anything else, right? We can ask questions of it.
Right.
But is there a way that, or a sign or something that kind of reflects that you've had a change or I've had a change?
Well, we all have what we call the overall consciousness. Okay, it's the one that asks the question. Some people say, "Who's asking the question? Is it my multidimensional soul, my human entity, my body asking the question?" It's your overall consciousness. Your overall consciousness takes inputs from the body, from the human entity, the soul, and so forth. That stays intact. Okay. Now, that part of it is also monitoring the feedback. So, most cases, it doesn't just happen. Okay. If we're tuning in, we're attentive, we will know that your soul is saying, "I'm leaving either for a while or permanently. And I'm making either another arrangement or we're going to use it as an exit point of some sort from all aspects," right? So let's stick to the one that is changing. Now, this is around 2012, like there was some confines removed or reduced. And what it meant that the souls were moving a lot more freely. What did that represent? That meant that if your soul, for example, feels that it cannot get the expanded version it wants, it can leave and say, "I'm going to leave for X amount of time, and I'm going to embody another physicality that's already on the planet, and another one will step in." Okay? And giving it to be able to experience something it wasn't able to experience with you, but then bring that knowledge, that enrichment back to you, and the other one will go back, because that one that's coming in is possibly coming from another. That's called soul swapping. Okay? The drop-in part is, at times, what ends up happening is the soul has a couple of choices they usually make. One, it says, "I'm done with this experience. I'm going to leave permanently." Okay? And I'm going to make it available because the human entity is not done, and neither is the body, and it's still a viable vehicle, and it's plugged in and has such beautiful connections at this point. So another soul can drop in, and so that soul can take over and run with that and continue the journey. Now, and the other one would say, "Well, I'm going to leave just for a while, go through an enrichment process in non-form, and then I'll come back." All right. So those are the various options. How can you tell? Well, when you're connected with yourself, you not only will you have communication, but you will notice very profound change that may happen very quickly. You may experience a day that you feel empty, like there's something missing in you. But then afterwards, you have it come in and something changes. So what are you going to notice? That one source of input, meaning your multidimensional soul, is now communicating at a different level, and it's bringing a different experiential level, and sometimes a different frequency, because it's notable or noticeable frequency difference. And you can feel, "Oh, okay, now bringing in another multidimensional soul into this experience." Now, the human entity will now have to align with that new soul, so does your body. And then your overall consciousness will say, "Okay, great, let's work something out and let's do it." Now, depending how different the frequency is, you will see the characteristics change very quickly. All of a sudden, what used to be interesting is no longer interesting. Or what it may have displayed a certain facet of itself, a certain way, like in representation, somebody that may be super patient and loving and whatever else, in one. And then this other one is more focused on being directed and getting these things done. So it tends to push that type of a narrative of sorts, and be able to create an alignment so that it's more focused to say, okay, so for example, there's one soul that may be in that's played a role as the experiencer, adopting experiences, working a deal with it. So that soul says, I'm done, I'm finished, I got what I needed. So another soul comes in, but that soul may have a different purpose. That soul says, hey, I came here to help. So now I'm going to integrate all of this and I'm going to play out the role. All of a sudden, now their consciousness raised. They're able to access things they weren't able to access before. I'm talking about the overall. Because you probably may have yourself or somebody else in your life, all of a sudden it's like, who is this person? I mean, all of a sudden, from being so afraid in 3D, now is looking at the world and saying, I got it. This is what we're doing. And all of a sudden, they're dropping all of their old world, meaning their old relationships, possibly. I'm not saying always. Their job or, whatever they were focused on. Oh, I'm now going to do this. And that happens very quickly. The other thing is, there are people that are sensitive that if they pay attention to it, they'll notice the signature is different, the vibration, the frequency is different, because every soul has a unique vibrational frequency. So that's how you can tell. Those are various ways. We don't have to get caught up in it, but, say, well, I had 10 lives. I mean, I've had 2 or 3 souls or whatever it is. For the person that you mentioned, which happens to be my partner, lovely Kimberly, she's went through 4 souls. But in her case, just so that we can get an understanding of it, the original soul that came in, stuck around until age 21. And around age 21, it needed to go and play a different role, which that soul said, I did what I needed to do. I'm not really interested in this other phase of your life. And it's not like her life, but that phase of her progress. So that soul came in and it hung around until age 44 and says, okay, your role is going to shift. I'm not capable to take that role because I'm not interested in it. So that soul left in and another soul came in. That soul was from the angelic realms, what we can call an archangel realm. But it's an archangel realm that actually does take on physical forms in, say, on a human level, and said, okay, we are now going to prepare. So then all of a sudden things change so that new choices come in, their vibration increases, their connections change and so forth to be preparing to play a different role. Now, then say, well, that's 3. Where's the 4th one? Well, at some point later on, the soul says, okay, I need to go for an upgrade. So I'm going to leave for 4 months. And I'm making arrangements for another soul to come in. Okay? So that soul went in to get recharged, do whatever it needed to do for its upgrade in non-form, and then another soul stepped in. Now, I was involved. I was in the relationship when the stepped-in soul, like I only caught the 3rd soul, and then it left, and then the 4th soul came in only for the 4 months. Now, to the point, it let me know in advance that was going to happen. Her soul, the one that left, said, listen, this is what I'm going to do, and it's going to happen around this time. It said basically the date. I kept it to myself until it got closer, and then I mentioned it to Kimberly, saying leaving for a period of time and then coming back.
Going in for a tune-up.
Yeah, so she didn't know what to make of it, but in a sense, she had the experience. And I mean, she would be probably the best person to explain everything that went with it. But I'm going to give you my...
Sounds like a sound.
Yes, that alone. But anyways, with that transition, the soul that stepped in was really focused on intent of getting things done a certain way. And it shifted. Okay, you have a great, beautiful relationship with Morgan and whatever else. If her soul left and another soul came in, the relationship felt different. I remember with Kimberly, it felt different, almost to the point I didn't have the same closeness. I recognized her, but it's not the same pull. And in fact, even considering, say, intimacy was like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right, because it's almost like another person, but it's not. Right. It's the same physicality, the same human entity, but it's a different soul. And because of the different frequency, it didn't, I know who she is, but I don't recognize her to the same degree as I used to recognize her before. Right. Okay? So that landed for four months. And then there was the one day between where she had the experience of being soulless, and it felt vacated. And then after that, the third one came back, and the other one left, and then the Kimberly I knew came back in. But I also noticed a difference because it was an even higher vibration. And then because she does energy work, she used to do energy work on me time to time. And most of the energy work that she was doing I wasn't feeling it to the same profoundness. But then when the soul came back from its upgrade and she was doing some energy work on me, and I was like, whoa, okay, somebody's coming back supercharged, right? Because of the fact that the soul had actually.
And the intimacy.
Yes. Well, now all of a sudden it didn't feel like I was cheating anymore, if I went down that path. And it was the same with her too, because I'm sure if she explained it to you, she made it very clear. I see who you are. I recognize you. I know who you are, but I don't know you on the same level as before. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. Well, I think maybe what we can do is we can cut this one off and then take a little break and come back and do another one.
Sure.
You want to do
Sure.
that?
Absolutely.
If you're up to
How are you for time, guys?
5:15.
So
Okay, we're good.
We leave at what? 7? Probably.
7.
Yeah.
We should be able to squeeze in another one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So
Okay, guys.
we're going to go and get a bite to eat. I got to do some things on email, and then we'll come back and see. It's 5:10, so we could come back at like in 30, 40 minutes, something like that,
Or less.
Whatever. We'll be back. We'll be back for part 2.
We'll post it.
Part 2.
So
Thank
see you guys later.
Yeah. Let me just do this real quick. Boom. We're done.
Hour 35. 1 hour 35.
One. Yeah, you're
We're
right.
still live, but
Hey, Jade.
Yeah.
wrap it.
Here we go. Boom.
Right on.
Boom.
Say where your stuff is right here.
Well, I don't